She was the only black girl on the honor roll, and the only one pulled aside by security when the school laptop went missing. No one looked at the cameras. No one questioned the white boy who borrowed it last. Just her tears in her eyes, backpack dumped on the floor. Then, from the principal's office, the missing laptop lit up, but the name logged in wasn't hers. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us, where are you watching from? Share in the comments below. Ariel Monroe didn't look like a prodigy. Not to the world, at least. She was small for 12 petite, even with tightly coiled braids that brushed her collarbones and a pair of thrift store sneakers scuffed at the toe. She rarely spoke unless asked, and when she did, her voice was soft, almost apologetic, as if afraid her thoughts might take up too much space. But behind her almond-shaped eyes lived a mind that bent space and time in ways no adult in her orbit fully grasped. Equations didn't confuse her. They calmed her. She saw numbers the way some children saw color, vivid, moving, alive. Patterns whispered to her in quiet moments. Ratios danced across ceilings when teachers explained fractions. By 10, she had mastered calculus. At 11, she was solving integrals her tutors Googled behind her back. And now, at just 12 years old, she was seated inside a lecture hall on Harvard's historic campus, the only child, let alone the only black child, surrounded by students at least 6 years older than her. She wore her Sunday best, a navy blue blouse with modest ruffles and gray slacks that her mother ironed 5 times the night before. Her pink notebook was balanced neatly on her lap, the spiral edges pressed tight from nervous fiddling. She sat upright, hands in her lap, eyes forward, heart pounding. She didn't know where to rest her gaze, the stained glass windows, the podium, the arc of pale necks in front of her. She chose the chalkboard, steady and predictable. A hush fell over the room. Dr. Wendell Krauss entered, sleeves rolled, tie loose, the kind of man who'd spent decades marinating in admiration. He was considered a god among academic circles, a tenured professor who once solved an abstract topology conundrum blindfolded for a TED Talk. To students, he was both legend and gatekeeper. To Ariel, he was her first real test. He began with charm, a joke about MIT, a story about Einstein's bad handwriting. The room chuckled on cue. Then, he dropped the problem. A massive equation scrawled across 3 panels of the chalkboard, each line a hurricane of symbols, matrices, limits, and abstract variables. Students leaned forward, squinting. Some took photos. One boy murmured, "No way." Dr. Krauss turned with a grin. "This," he announced, "is one of the few unsolved problems left open by Dr. Ernesto Villarreal, a mathematical pioneer from the 72nds. Most consider it theoretical abstract, maybe even meaningless. But it's elegant and dangerous. Think you're smart enough to try?" The challenge hung in the air like fog. Ariel's eyes didn't flinch. She recognized the structure, a recursive matrix nested within nonlinear constraints. A chaos problem, but buried inside was a symmetry flawed, subtle, but fixable. Her fingers itched. Her breath shortened. "Doctor," Krauss continued, "this is not on your syllabus. In fact, no one here is expected to solve it. I just want to see how you think." He scanned the room. When his gaze landed on Ariel, it stopped just half a second too long. His smile faded. Then came the moment that undid her. A boy behind her whispered, not softly enough, "Why's a middle schooler even here?" A girl giggled. Ariel didn't flinch. This wasn't the first room she'd entered where her skin spoke before her mind. Back in Atlanta, teachers often paused when they saw her name on the gifted list. One substitute asked if she was in the wrong room. Another told her mother she was very articulate. Always, surprisingly, always, unexpectedly. Even in this elite program handpicked from across the country, Ariel had noticed how the black students, fewer than 5 out of over 100, were always seated at the edges of group photos, quietly cropped out of brilliance. But Ariel had been taught better. Tamika Monroe raised her daughter on 2 truths. You are smarter than they expect and kinder than they deserve. So, she raised her hand. The gesture was silent, precise, steady. Dr. Krauss looked confused. He didn't even acknowledge her at first, just blinked, then resumed talking. But her hand stayed up, straight, unyielding. Finally, he turned. "Yes?" Ariel's voice was even. "The symmetry in the lower constraints is flawed." Murmurs. She continued. "If you isolate the divergent vector fields and subtract their overlapping noise, the matrix simplifies. It's not unsolvable. It's just misaligned. The room went still. Someone snorted. Kraus raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry. What's your name again? Ariel Monroe. He walked over slowly, arms folded. Miss Monroe, that problem has stumped PhDs for 40 years. Yes, sir. And you're 12? Yes, sir. He chuckled. Then, not kindly, a full laugh burst from him, sharp, echoing, performative. The room followed. Students smirked. A few outright laughed. Kraus shook his head. You think you can solve this? You? Yes. More laughter. Someone clapped mockingly. Kraus stepped aside, gesturing to the board with dramatic flourish. Be my guest, then. Show us all how a 12-year-old black girl from Atlanta is about to embarrass Harvard. Silence. All eyes on her. Ariel stood slowly, her notebook in hand. Her legs trembled slightly, but her mind was still, calm, focused. Every step to the board felt like walking through fire, but she remembered what her mama told her that morning. If they already decided who you are, make them remember who you actually are. She uncapped the marker. The board loomed in front of her, taller than her, ancient and gleaming under the weight of 1,000 failed thoughts. Her hands reached out. And then, just as Ariel touched the board, Dr. Kraus snapped. Wait, stop right there. Before you write a single symbol, let's make this interesting. He turned to the class, then back to her with a smirk. If you get this wrong, you leave the program. Today. She could still hear the laughter. It followed her down the corridor like a shadow faint, echoing, stitched into the tile floors and mahogany walls of Harvard's prestigious mathematics hall. Even after Dr. Kraus waved her off the chalkboard with a smirk and dismissed her logic as childish intuition. Ariel Monroe hadn't argued. She'd quietly returned to her seat, picked up her notebook, and wrote in silence. The numbers didn't laugh at her. They never had. But the room did. That day in the lecture hall had become a defining moment, not because she had failed, but because no one had expected her to succeed. The problem was never whether she was right. The problem was that she wasn't supposed to be. For the next 3 weeks, Ariel faded into the folds of the institution. She attended every lecture. She answered no questions. She sat in the front, always on time, always prepared. But her hand stayed down. Her voice disappeared. She learned more than math. She learned how to survive silence. And yet, the whispers grew louder. She's the one who thought she solved the Villarreal problem, right? Is she even old enough to be here? Diversity pick. Ariel knew what that term meant. Not just the word itself, but the tone it carried, coded in suspicion, condescension, a suggestion that her presence wasn't earned, only tolerated. Her test scores had been higher than most of the undergrads. Her recommendation letters came from senior professors. But none of that mattered when your brilliance was wrapped in skin the institution didn't expect to see in that room. She had become a symbol, not of potential, but of quota. They never said it aloud, but she saw it in their eyes. She doesn't belong here. And that belief shaped how they moved around her. In group labs, her ideas were overlooked until repeated by someone else. In seminars, professors called on everyone but her. One PhD student, a tall boy named Ethan with pale skin and a Harvard crest on every hoodie he owned, made a habit of sitting directly in front of her and turning just enough to block her view of the board. One afternoon, he dropped his notes and said, without looking back, "Can the kid pass those up?" She wasn't a peer. She was a servant in their castle of intellect. Her mother, Tamika, called every night, sensing the shift. "You okay, baby?" "I'm learning." "What kind of learning?" "The kind that doesn't come with a textbook." Tamika knew better than to push. She had fought too many battles in boardrooms and back offices where her voice was dismissed until a white colleague echoed her. She knew the tone of her daughter's silence. It wasn't surrender. It was restraint. Still, Ariel didn't tell her about what they called her behind her back. Didn't tell her about the anonymous note someone left in her dorm cubby. Smart mouth, for a charity case. Let the real students speak. She had stared at it for 10 minutes, then tore it into perfect strips, calculated and precise, like solving an equation. But even in isolation, she never stopped solving. Her notebook, the pink one she carried everywhere, was no longer filled with class notes. It had become her refuge. A space to stretch, to dream, to calculate what couldn't be said aloud. On page 47, she began quietly dissecting the Villarreal problem, despite what Dr. Kraus had said. Not because she needed to prove anything to him, but because the problem itself had asked to be solved. She couldn't ignore it. Each night, while others slept or partied or posted about their Ivy League adventures, Ariel sat at her desk, surrounded by scribbled pages and dim desk lamplight, reworking the formula. Her mind unraveled it like yarn, one thread at a time. Every assumption they made, she questioned it. Every flaw they normalized, she corrected it. And slowly, something began to emerge. Not a guess, not intuition, but a solution. She knew what she was seeing. She just didn't know if the world would allow her to be the one who saw it first. By the end of the third week, she had filled 2 notebooks. The numbers clicked. The sequence aligned. The symmetry that once eluded Villarreal now stood in plain view because someone with no legacy to defend, no ego to protect, had dared to see it differently. But still, she said nothing. Because what would happen if she did? Would they laugh again? Would they call it luck? Would Dr. Krauss accuse her of stealing? Or worse, pretend it didn't exist? She tucked the solution into the back pocket of her notebook. She made copies. She hid one under her mattress, one behind the lining of her backpack, another inside a book on African American mathematics history she borrowed from the campus library. It wasn't paranoia, it was protection. Because Ariel Monroe was no longer trying to prove she was brilliant. She was trying to survive the consequences of being brilliant in the wrong body. And then someone saw her. It was late, nearly midnight. Ariel was in the back of the mathematics library, in a corner most students didn't know existed. There was a whiteboard there, half cracked and uneven, but good enough for her mind to stretch. She stood on her tiptoes, sketching the final steps of the proof in dry erase marker. Her left hand held her notes. Her right danced across the board. She was in flow, completely unaware she was being watched. Behind a row of books, someone stood frozen. Her name was Jade Park, a Korean-American graduate student in abstract systems, known for keeping to herself. She had entered to return a book and had caught sight of Ariel from the edge of the aisle. At first, she watched out of curiosity, then confusion, then disbelief. She recognized the equation. More importantly, she recognized the correction. She stepped forward, slowly, not wanting to interrupt. But Ariel noticed the motion in the corner of her eye. She turned, startled. Jade raised her hands. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Ariel backed away slightly. Defensive. Jade pointed to the board. Is that what I think it is? Ariel didn't answer. Jade took a step closer. Did you solve the Villarreal? Still, Ariel said nothing. Jade didn't laugh. She didn't mock. Instead, she whispered, Holy shit. Ariel looked down. Please don't tell anyone. Jade nodded, slowly, her eyes never leaving the board. You're 12? Yes. And this is your work? All of it. Jade's mind spun. She had spent years watching professors debate this problem. And here, in front of her, a child dismissed and mocked had quietly cracked it open like a riddle. Ariel waited for the dismissal, the patronizing praise, the backhanded compliment. Instead, Jade said, This belongs in a journal. Ariel's eyes widened. No, you can't keep this hidden. I have to. If I show it, they'll say I copied it, or that someone helped me, or that it's not real. Jade stepped back, her expression shifting. Not pity, but understanding. She had been the only Asian woman in her doctoral cohort. She had heard the whispers. She had seen her work minimized, her credit redirected. But this was different. This was a child. And she had done something no tenured professor had done in 40 years. I won't tell anyone, Jade said, softly. Not unless you want me to. Ariel nodded. Her shoulders dropped, just slightly. A breath escaped her she didn't know she'd been holding. Jade left without saying another word. But as she walked out, her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from awe. Because deep inside those ivy-covered walls, past the portraits of dead white men and centuries of exclusion, someone had just rewritten history, and no one was ready for who it was. The next morning, Ariel returned to the library to find her notebook. Gone. It was gone. Ariel stood motionless in front of the shelf, where her notebook had been row 3, left wing of the library, second book from the wall, behind the dusty cover of African American mathematicians, hidden histories. She had hidden it there with the precision of a codebreaker. But now, only the book remained. The hiding spot hadn't been obvious. She had told no one. Not even Jade. Her fingers reached behind the book's worn spine again, searching desperately for the slim bundle of paper. Empty, her chest hollowed. Her eyes scanned the room, the tables, the waste bin. Nothing. Ariel didn't panic. Not yet. Instead, she sat down, unzipped her backpack, and flipped through every pocket. Her backup copy? Still there, hidden behind a folded jacket and an extra snack bar. But her original notes, the one with every step, mapped out, the one she worked on at night for weeks, the one filled with margin notes and thoughts she hadn't yet translated, was missing. The air in the library shifted. Heavy now. Accusatory. She felt it before she understood it. Something was about to go wrong. It did. By that afternoon, the whispers returned. This time, sharper. You heard about the hoax, right? I knew it was too good to be true. That kid's a fraud. The hallway around Ariel buzzed, but no one looked at her directly. The students passed her like she was furniture present, but unacknowledged. A few girls who had once asked for her help now turned their backs. One boy laughed a little too loud when she entered the lecture hall, nudging the friend next to him with a smirk. She sat in the second row, notebook open, hands steady. But inside, her mind raced. Then Dr. Krauss walked in. Unlike usual, he didn't start with a joke. No light banter, no self-deprecating charm. He went straight to the board, tapped his pen twice, and turned to face the room. I want to address something before we begin today's lecture, he said. His eyes lingered on Ariel, not directly, but near enough. There's been chatter about a so-called solution to the Villarreal conundrum, he continued, voice slow, deliberate. An anonymous paper was submitted to the system yesterday morning. No name, no timestamp, just a file, uploaded to the math department's shared drive. It claimed to solve the unsolvable. The room leaned in. Krauss's jaw tensed. Let me be perfectly clear. This paper is not only incorrect, it is dangerous. And worse, it appears to be plagiarized. Portions of the solution match archived work from Dr. Villarreal's unpublished notes. Ariel blinked. Slowly, she hadn't uploaded anything. Someone else had. Her skin tingled, like ice down her spine. She raised her hand. Krauss ignored her. I've already alerted the review board, he continued. And until further notice, the individual responsible will not be allowed to present work in this class. Now the eyes turned to her. Not all of them, but enough. Ariel lowered her hand. She had been erased and replaced. Just like that. After class, she approached Krauss. Professor, she said softly. He didn't look at her. I don't have time for games. I didn't upload anything. He finally faced her. Cold, composed. Then how did your notes end up in the department database? I don't know, I didn't submit. Convenient. A pause. Look, he continued, stepping closer. You embarrassed me once. Fine. But this? He shook his head. You think intelligence is just solving problems on a whiteboard? That's not how academia works. Ariel's throat tightened. So, you're saying I couldn't have solved it? I'm saying you didn't. He turned and walked away. She stood there, frozen, the weight of centuries pressing on her shoulders. For the rest of the day, her access to several course files was mysteriously revoked. Her email pinged with a message from the Honor Code office, requesting a formal meeting. She reread it 5 times. Her name, her ID, a line that made her stomach flip. You have been flagged in relation to a plagiarism investigation involving submitted theoretical work attributed to Dr. Ernesto Villarreal's unpublished archives. There was no mention of innocence until proven guilty. There was no mention of how those notes appeared in the system. Just suspicion. Just accusation. She printed a copy of the email and walked straight to the library. Jade was waiting there. I heard, Jade whispered. I didn't submit anything. I know. Someone stole my notebook. Jade's eyes hardened. Then it's not a coincidence. Someone's framing you. But why? Jade hesitated. Because you proved them wrong. And people like him, people like Krauss, they'd rather rewrite history than admit someone they overlooked was right. Ariel didn't respond. She was staring at the printout. I have to fight this, she whispered. You're 12, Jade said gently. I'm right, Ariel answered. Jade didn't argue. That night, Ariel went through every file on her laptop. She checked the timestamps on her work. She printed hard copies. She documented everything. Dates, margins, even the pen colors she used. She scanned her backup notebook and uploaded it to a secure drive. But then she saw something that made her blood run cold. The file in the department database, the one Krauss claimed was plagiarized, had metadata. She found a copy of it, buried in the system's public folder cache. It was there for less than 6 hours before being flagged. but someone had saved it. She opened it and gasped. It was her work, word for word, margin notes, footnotes. Even the slight error she made on page 6 before correcting it later, it was all there. Which meant one thing. Someone had copied her notebook. Someone had stolen it and uploaded it anonymously to sabotage her. Her stomach turned. She clicked the file properties. Last modified, 312A. M. Uploaded from faculty admin login, Kraus_W@harvard.edu. She froze. The blood drained from her face. It was his login. Either he uploaded it himself, or someone used his credentials. Ariel leaned back in her chair, shaking. This wasn't just academic dishonesty. This was character assassination. It was theft. Weaponized. She thought about telling Jade. Thought about calling her mother. But then the screen flickered. Her access cut out. The file vanished. Gone. Just like her notebook. Then her inbox dinged. New message. Subject. Honor code meeting. Tomorrow 9 a.m. Sharp. No greeting. No explanation. Just a time. A warning. Ariel stared at the screen and realized the email was CC'd to her mother and Harvard's legal counsel. The morning of the hearing, Harvard Square was quiet, but Ariel's world was not. She sat stiffly in the waiting area of the Honor Code office, legs swinging slightly off the chair because they didn't quite touch the floor. Her mother, Tamika Monroe, sat beside her, shoulders squared, chin high, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles had turned white. She wore a navy pantsuit, sharp and pressed, but her expression told a fuller story. She was not here to negotiate. She was here to witness. Ariel hadn't said much on the drive over, just stared out the window as the old buildings passed buildings that had stood for centuries, untouched, unmoved, built on traditions that had never made space for girls like her. A security officer opened the door. They're ready. Tamika rose first. So are we. They walked down the corridor, past frosted glass offices and gold-lettered plaques. Ariel had seen those names before. Portraits of men with cold smiles and stone eyes. Hallways that whispered legacies not hers. Inside the conference room were 5 people. 4 faculty members and 1 student representative. The table was long. Empty glasses of water sat untouched. Her school counselor, Mrs. Levin, stood by the door, but didn't meet Ariel's eyes. No one smiled. Dr. Kraus was absent. "Please be seated," said a woman with a clipped voice and silver-rimmed glasses. "We are here today to discuss a serious breach of Harvard's academic integrity policy. Miss Monroe, you are accused of plagiarizing a mathematical proof from an archived document and submitting it as original work." "I didn't submit anything," Ariel said quietly. "No formal record was found linking your login to the file," the woman continued. "However, the work is identical to your notebook, according to several witnesses, including your own mother, who submitted copies." Tamika's voice cut in. "Which means the work originated with my daughter." "Yes," the woman said slowly, "but that introduces a separate concern. The file was uploaded using a faculty credential, Dr. Kraus's account. Specifically, do you have access to his login?" "No," Ariel said. The man beside her, a professor of ethics, cleared his throat. "Do you understand the seriousness of what we're discussing here, Miss Monroe? We're not just talking about stolen work. We're talking about fabricating authorship and potentially tampering with university systems." "I didn't fake anything," Ariel said. Tamika leaned forward. "Are you investigating Dr. Kraus?" Silence. The committee chair shuffled her. "Papers. That is, under internal review. You're reviewing a 12-year-old, Tamika said slowly, in front of a disciplinary board, before you've reviewed the adult professor whose login was used to sabotage her." A pause. No one answered. The student representative finally spoke, voice uncertain. "Has Dr. Kraus made any statements about the file?" Another pause. Then the ethics professor answered, "He has stated the solution does not align with standard academic frameworks and that its language is too advanced for a middle school student." Ariel felt her body shrink, not because she was afraid, but because the truth no longer mattered. They'd already decided who she was. She was too smart to be believed, too young to be trusted, too black to be protected. The meeting stretched for 90 minutes. At every turn, the panel shifted the goalposts. Her notes were unverified. Her metadata was inconclusive. The fact that her notebook had vanished from her hiding spot was curious, but not enough to delay proceedings. The accusation remained. The burden of proof was on the child. Mrs. Levin said nothing. Not once. When it was over, the chair leaned forward. You are suspended from the math residency program pending full investigation. We strongly advise against discussing this with media or faculty. Your future academic standing at Harvard is at this moment uncertain. Ariel didn't cry. She stood, nodded, and walked out. Outside, Tamika followed in silence for half a block. Then she stopped cold. Ariel turned. Her mother's voice cracked. They're going to try to bury this. I know, Ariel whispered. Tamika knelt in front of her daughter. Baby, this is not about math anymore. This is about power. These people are scared of you. I didn't want power, Ariel said. I just wanted to be seen. Tamika's face twisted. I know. That night, they stayed in a hotel off campus. Tamika called lawyers. She contacted civil rights groups. No one moved fast enough. At 10:22 p.m., Ariel sat on the hotel bed, holding her notebook tightly to her chest. Everything she had built every sleepless night, every scribbled page, every calculation born of curiosity had become a weapon used against her. Her genius had been reframed as deceit, her silence reinterpreted as guilt. And Harvard, the institution she once dreamed of, had shown her exactly what her dream cost. Around midnight, Tamika's phone buzzed. Blocked number. She hesitated, then answered. The voice on the line was whisper quiet. Hurried. You don't know me, it said. But I saw something you need to see. Tamika froze. Who is this? I work. I can't say where. But I have access to internal security logs. And? There's video footage from the math library. From the night before the file was uploaded. Tamika's pulse jumped. You mean of my daughter? No. Of someone taking her notebook. Silence. Tamika's voice dropped to a growl. Send it. I already did. Check your inbox. I used a burner address. I can't be traced. The line went dead. Tamika's hands shook as she opened her laptop, refreshed her inbox. One email. No subject. Attached file. Cam. F3. Library. Access. 312 AM. MOV. She clicked. The video was grainy. Black and white. Timestamped. 3:12 AM. It showed the back hallway of the mathematics library. A figure entered the frame, hood up. Face mostly obscured, but clearly adult. Tall. Male. The figure approached the shelf, pulled a book, reached behind it, removed a slim pink notebook, then left. Fast. Smooth. Like someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Tamika paused the video, rewound, watched the motion again, then zoomed. The hand. The ring. A distinctive silver band with a crest engraved on it. She had seen it before. Dr. Wendell Krauss wore it every day. Tamika stared at the frozen frame, then reached for her phone, ready to expose everything, when suddenly, the email disappeared from her inbox. Deleted, remotely, and the laptop screen went black. Tamika stared at the blacked-out laptop screen, her chest pounding. The video proof of the theft had vanished right in front of her. 1 second it played. The next, gone. Not just closed. Erased. She held down the power button, praying it was just a glitch. Nothing. The screen remained dead. No lights, no hum. Ariel looked up from across the hotel room. What happened? Tamika swallowed hard. They wiped it. Ariel's voice trembled. Who? I don't know, but someone with access. She grabbed her phone, but the email was gone from there too. Not in the inbox. Not in trash. The address it came from blank. No contact history. No metadata. Clean. Too clean. Tamika stood, pacing now. Everything in her gut told her this wasn't just academic. It was strategic. Calculated. Institutions didn't panic unless they had something to lose. And Harvard had just revealed its fear. But then her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One text. I knew they'd scrub it. Here's a backup. Don't waste it. Attached was a new link. This time hosted off-campus. Encrypted. Tamika clicked it and held her breath. The footage loaded instantly. This wasn't the library hallway. This was inside the reading room. A tighter camera angle. Clearer frame. Ariel. Alone. 2:11 AM. She sat cross-legged at the whiteboard, notebook in her lap, hoodie slipping from her shoulder, math symbols spiraling around her. She wasn't using notes. She wasn't copying. She was creating. Every symbol came from her own hand, slow and exact, as if pulling math from her bones. Line after line, equation after equation. The timestamp ran nearly 40 minutes. Tamika covered her mouth. This was it. Proof. Not just of innocence, but of genius. She clicked download. Saved it in 3 places. Backed it up to a secure drive. Emailed it to herself. Then printed a still image, a frame showing Ariel mid-solution, chalk in hand, eyes focused. It was nearly 3 a.m. when the knock came. Tamika stiffened. Another knock, firmer. She approached the door, looked through the peephole. A woman in a gray pantsuit stood outside, holding a black folder. Tamika cracked the door. Yes? Miss Monroe, my name is Lisa Cantwell. I represent Harvard's Office of Legal Affairs. May I speak with you? Tamika didn't open the door wider. Now's not a good time. I won't take long. Tamika exhaled and opened it slowly. The woman stepped in, cool and polished. I understand things have escalated, and I also understand you've come into possession of sensitive material. Tamika crossed her arms. Is that what we're calling it now? Cantwell smiled faintly. We're here to ensure your daughter's experience at Harvard, regardless of the outcome, is handled with dignity and care. Tamika's eyes narrowed. You're not here for dignity, you're here to silence us. Cantwell opened the folder and slid it across the table. Inside, a document labeled Confidential Agreement. Tamika didn't touch it. Cantwell spoke calmly. This is a private settlement offer. It includes a formal apology letter from the university, early completion certification for your daughter's participation in the program, and a one-time payment to assist with her continued education outside of Harvard. Ariel looked up, confused. Cantwell continued. In return, you agree not to pursue legal or public action. This matter remains sealed. No media, no court. Just closure. Tamika's blood boiled. Closure for who? For everyone involved, Cantwell replied. You want me to sell my daughter's truth for a check and a certificate? No, Cantwell said smoothly. I want to protect her from years of litigation, media trauma, and scrutiny. You and I both know what happens when these stories go public. She'll be the girl who sued Harvard, not the girl who solved the impossible. Tamika stepped closer. No, she'll be the girl who was stolen from, and you want to make that disappear. Cantwell remained calm. This is the cleanest path forward. No threats, no press, no danger. You walk away. Tamika looked at Ariel silent, eyes wide. Her baby, her miracle. Then she turned back to the folder. What happens if I say no? Cantwell's voice dropped a note. We prepare to defend the university. Vigorously. Tamika's voice, flat now. And if I say yes, I become part of the cover-up. The silence stretched. Then, softly, Cantwell said, you need to think about her future. Tamika nodded slowly. I have. She grabbed the folder, tore it clean down the middle. Cantwell blinked. Tamika walked to the trash, dropped the shredded contract inside, and said without turning, you can let them know. We're going public. Cantwell's voice sharpened. Then I suggest you hire a very good lawyer. Tamika opened the door. Already did. Cantwell walked out, heels sharp on the tile. An hour later, Tamika sat beside Ariel on the bed, the glow of her phone lighting the room. She uploaded the footage to a secure server, attached a statement, added the image of Ariel solving the problem in silence. She hovered over the post button. Ariel whispered, Are you sure? Tamika looked at her. I'm not here to keep you safe anymore, she said softly. I'm here to make them sorry they ever thought you needed protection. And she tapped post. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, TikTok. 1 2-year-old black girl solves Harvard's impossible equation, then gets accused of cheating. Leaked footage shows Harvard child prodigy, creating original proof. While alone in library. Is Harvard covering up racism in academia? Thousands of views became hundreds of thousands. Hashtags spread like wildfire. Number believe black genius, number protect Ariel, number Harvard scandal. Jade texted instantly. It's happening. One journalist emailed. Then 5. Then 15. Harvard issued a vague statement within hours, denying wrongdoing. Too late. The clip was being played on cable news. Op-eds started appearing. One from a black professor at Yale read, Harvard didn't just fail this child. They tried to erase her. Again. Celebrities reposted. Scholars defended her. Activists demanded accountability. Ariel sat still through it all. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She watched it the way someone watches a fire burn something that needed to happen. But deep down, she knew the attention wasn't the end. It was the beginning. As the video trended globally, Ariel received a new email, no subject, no sender, containing a single line. Be careful, he's not finished with you yet. By sunrise, Ariel Monroe's face had circled the globe. Not the usual kind of viral. Not a dance challenge, or a meme, or a child caught doing something adorable, but a still image, her silhouette in front of a whiteboard at 2:13 a.m., mid-equation, chalk hovering like a conductor's wand paired with a headline that refused to let anyone look away. Harvard accused of covering up black girl prodigy's breakthrough math proof. From Brazil to Berlin, people shared the clip, reposted the footage, added their own outraged captions. Prominent mathematicians began analyzing the problem, piece by piece, only to arrive at the same conclusion. This isn't just real, it's revolutionary. Dr. Isla Renshaw, Cambridge University, 12 years old. Do you know how rare that is? No way, this was fabricated. Dr. Jean Boudreau, MIT. The system didn't protect her because it wasn't built for her. Dr. Mallory Lynn, Columbia. And yet, as Ariel's name rose into trending topics, Harvard remained silent. For 24 hours, the institution said nothing. But inside its walls, panic brewed. Damage control meetings, PR consultants, legal risk assessments. By the second day, the university released a tightly worded statement. Harvard takes all academic allegations seriously. We are actively reviewing the matter and have found inconsistencies in how the footage has been interpreted. Until our review is complete, we urge the public to avoid forming premature conclusions. It was vague enough to cast doubt, calculated enough to protect the brand, and cold enough to remind the world this institution wasn't built to say sorry. But the real blow came that night. Dr. Wendell Krauss appeared on national television, CNN, primetime, polished blazer, Princeton tie, and the same smirk he wore in lecture halls. The anchor introduced him as a long-standing scholar and thought leader in mathematics. Krauss smiled gently, like a man falsely accused. First, let me say I support young minds. I've mentored hundreds of students. I love seeing passion in the next generation. But, the anchor pressed. Ariel Monroe, 12 years old, she's being hailed as a once-in-a-generation genius. Did she solve the Villarreal conundrum? Krauss paused, as if the question burdened him. Then he leaned forward. There's no way she did it unaided. The words cut like wire. She may have repeated something she saw, or misunderstood the problem. He continued smoothly. It happens with young learners. They get excited. But this is an extremely complex proof. The type of thing a doctoral student might take years to attempt. And the footage? The anchor asked. Taken out of context, it shows her writing, but not where the work came from. Who helped her? What drafts she had access to? It's unclear. Back in Atlanta, Ariel watched the screen from the corner of her bedroom. Her fingers dug into the blanket. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't angry. He was calm, controlled, deceptively reasonable. And that was more dangerous than anything. Tamika paced the room behind her. He's planting doubt. That's the play. He's lying, Ariel said softly. I know. They'll believe him. Tamika turned. Some might, but not all, and not forever. Still, the damage began to set in. Comment threads split into camps. Some screamed racism. Others asked for more evidence. One viral tweet read, "She's smart, no doubt. But let's not pretend this is the same as Einstein-level math. It's too perfect to be real." Another, "This is what happens when woke culture hands out genius status like candy." The irony? Ariel hadn't asked for any of this. She didn't want fame. She didn't want interviews. She just wanted to solve the problem. But the problem had never been about numbers. It was about who was allowed to be believed. By the fourth day, Harvard's honor board quietly reopened her file. Not to exonerate her, but to reevaluate the new information. They scheduled a second internal hearing. No media, no press, no legal representatives. A closed-door review of a crime they had created. Tamika refused to attend without legal counsel. They threatened to interpret her refusal as non-compliance. And still, Ariel stood her ground. She wrote a short statement, one page, single-spaced, ending with the line, "I will not be re-questioned for what you refused to see the first time." Then the twist arrived. Not from Harvard, not from a journalist, but from an inbox. A young black reporter named Marcel Davis, freelance but with solid credits, emailed Tamika late Friday night. Subject, Urgent Kraus, past student reached out. Attached was a message from an anonymous source. It read, I took Dr. Kraus's abstract systems course 3 years ago. I've seen him do this before, quietly sabotaging students he didn't think belonged. Especially women. Especially black and brown students. But this time, he got sloppy. I once worked part-time as a TA for him. He used to leave his office unlocked. One day I saw him editing student files, dragging folders into private directories, changing timestamps. I didn't say anything. I needed the grade. But I remember the name Monroe. It stuck. Because he said, this one's going to need to be corrected. I don't want to go public. But I have screenshots from that year. And I know how he hides things. If someone checks his machine, they'll find it. He doesn't just fear being wrong. He fears being wrong publicly. Especially by someone he thinks shouldn't be smarter than him. Marcel ended the email with one line. Do you want me to reach out to her? Tamika's reply was immediate. Yes. And tell her she's not alone anymore. An hour later, the former student emailed Marcel back with 3 encrypted files. One labeled, Kraus, hidden, logs, Ariel. And one of them had Ariel's original notebook scan, modified under Kraus's admin name. By the end of the week, Harvard's carefully managed facade had begun to crack, and the fault lines traced directly back to Dr. Wendell Kraus. It started small. A single tweet, posted by a former graduate student at Stanford, tagged with number Ariel Monroe. Kraus once corrected my proof just before submission. I later found out he replaced my name with his in a paper that won a minor award. I didn't speak up. I was 22 and scared, but I believe her. The account had fewer than 500 followers. But within hours, it had been reposted by thousands. Journalists, students, black academics, and allies amplified it. Then came another, and another. By Monday morning, a spreadsheet began circulating online. Unofficial, but sourced. Dozens of testimonies. Most anonymous. Many from women. Most from people of color. Each story disturbingly similar. He told me my tone was too aggressive during a presentation. Docked points. Same tone used by a white student next day. He applauded her. He asked me, do you really understand this material? Or are you just repeating what your partner gave you? I was working alone. I submitted a paper early. He told me it wasn't viable. A semester later, I saw my title on a research brief under his name. Some stories went back years. One former student wrote, I didn't even know I had been pushed out of the fellowship shortlist until someone in admin told me off the record. Kraus said I wasn't a good institutional fit. I had straight A's, but I was black. And female. I guess that wasn't the fit. Journalists picked up the thread like blood in the water. Marcel Davis was the first to go live with the story, dropping a detailed expose titled, The Pattern of Silence, How Harvard Protected a Predator of Potential. It was clinical, meticulous, and devastating. Inside it were quotes, screenshots, departmental emails, some from students who had since left academia entirely, others who stayed silent until now. All of them painted the same picture. Dr. Kraus wasn't just arrogant, he was a gatekeeper. And for years, he had kept the gate shut on anyone who didn't match the image he believed genius should look like. Harvard's initial response? They suspended him with pay. Ariel sat on the floor of her room when the alert came in. Her laptop open, the article glowing bright. Her face was unreadable. It didn't feel like victory. It didn't even feel like vindication. It felt like truth was finally louder than denial. Tamika, sitting beside her, whispered, They're finally listening. Ariel shook her head gently. Not to me. To each other. And she was right. Because what had started as one girl's quiet erasure had now become everyone's shared memory. The girl ignored in study groups. The woman passed over for tenure. The non-white student who had their work picked apart under harsher standards, only to see it reappear later under a more acceptable name. Dr. Kraus had not created the system, he had merely reflected it, and now, that reflection was shattering. Harvard's PR machine kicked into high gear. They released a second statement, this time longer, more formal, and filled with words like independent review, diversity committee, and commitment to equitable excellence. But it was too late. The media had moved past spin, and Ariel Monroe had become a symbol no press release could bury. Black scholars across the country began posting under the hashtag number We Are Ariel, not to center her alone, but to spotlight the generations of uncredited labor, invisible excellence, and institutional gaslighting that had always existed in elite academia. Some created digital archives of marginalized mathematicians throughout history. Others began open forums to support black students in STEM. One Ivy League professor resigned live on Instagram, citing an ecosystem of intellectual apartheid. But amid the firestorm, a larger spotlight emerged. Congress, specifically, the Subcommittee on Education, Civil Rights, and Equal Opportunity. On Thursday morning, Chairwoman Nadine Foster, a black congresswoman from Maryland with a reputation for zero tolerance, announced the formation of a federal inquiry into racial discrimination and bias in academic institutions. Her speech was clipped and direct. This is not about one girl or one professor. It's about how intelligence, in this country, has always been filtered through whiteness. How black genius is either doubted, diluted, or denied. It is time to investigate not just the crime, but the culture. The announcement went viral in seconds. Harvard's endowment board held emergency meetings. Sponsors threatened to pull funding. Alumni groups fractured. One group released a joint letter titled, "Harvard is not above scrutiny." But inside the storm, Ariel remained quiet. No interviews, no appearances, no press conferences. Instead, she stayed focused. Her whiteboard at home, once filled with equations, was now covered in names, not hers, not Krause's, but the names of every girl who'd emailed her, DM'd her, messaged her from around the world. "You made me feel like I wasn't alone. They called me too confident. You made me proud of that. Thank you for showing us it's okay to be smart out loud." Ariel wrote them all down, one by one. She had once believed her proof would be her legacy. But now, she understood. The proof was just the beginning. The morning after Congress announced its inquiry, Ariel received an unmarked envelope in the mail. Inside was a flash drive and a note. "You need to see what he tried to delete." The hearing was broadcast live. 3 networks carried it. C-SPAN streamed the full footage without commercial break. TikTok users chopped it into clips before the first question had even been answered. The room was austere, polished wood, arched ceiling, muted lighting, and silent, save for the shuffle of documents and the occasional throat clear. Ariel Monroe sat in the 3rd row. Not at the front, not at the microphone, just close enough to be watched but never invited to speak. Tamika sat beside her, jaw clenched, dressed in soft gray, a shade that refused to distract but refused to disappear. The Senate Subcommittee on Education, Civil Rights, and Equal Opportunity had summoned Harvard's top legal counsel, its dean of faculty, and an independent investigator appointed 6 days earlier. Notably missing, Dr. Wendell Krause. He had submitted a written statement instead. The committee chair, Nadine Foster, opened with a line that cut through the pageantry. "We're not here today to debate whether a 12-year-old black girl solved a math problem. That question's been answered. We're here to ask, why did the institution she trusted respond like it was a threat?" Murmurs, shifting seats. Harvard's general counsel leaned forward. He was crisp, professional, not defensive but exhaustingly diplomatic. "Our goal has always been to uphold academic integrity and maintain trust within our faculty and student body. There were inconsistencies in the chain of submission that required internal review." Chairwoman Foster nodded. "And what about the footage? Taken seriously. And the file metadata that linked back to a faculty login? Still under technical review. We do not wish to speculate." Senator Ramirez cut in. "Let's not pretend this isn't what it is." Another senator, older, white, visibly uncomfortable, shifted in his seat. "I just want to caution against drawing conclusions before we fully understand the institutional complexities at play." Foster raised an eyebrow. "And what conclusions do you believe we're drawing?" The man hesitated. That racism was the defining factor. The pause in the room was deliberate. Then Foster leaned in. "Senator, if a white male prodigy had solved the Villarreal problem, would this committee be assembled? Or would he already be featured on the cover of Time?" Silence. No one argued. Behind her, Ariel sat still. Her notebook was in her lap, closed, but her fingers pressed it like a shield. They were speaking around her, above her, beneath her, but never to her. And still, she listened. As her proof was entered into the National Academic Record, read aloud line by a third-party scholar, validating each step, as scientists offered sworn testimony that the work was original, groundbreaking, and structurally impossible to fake. As Harvard's own investigator admitted, there was no conclusive evidence of plagiarism and significant reason to believe a deliberate tampering event had occurred. And yet, something in the air still held back. The word, the root, racism. No one said it. Not once. After the hearing, in a hallway draped in velvet curtains, Ariel stood facing the wall-length portraits of congressional committees past. All men, all white, all smiling. Senator DeWitt, an older Southern moderate, approached Tamika quietly. He didn't expect Ariel to hear him, but she did. "It's not about truth anymore," he said. "It's about control. She's brilliant. No one's debating that. But brilliance in the wrong hands threatens everything this place was built on." Tamika stared him down. "Then maybe it's time we rebuild." He didn't respond, just walked away. That night, Ariel slept barely 2 hours. She dreamt of chalk dust and locked doors, of equations erased just as she finished them, of hands clapping not in celebration, but in mockery. When she woke, her phone had over 400 new notifications. One from Marcel Davis. "Call me. We have something." She dialed immediately. "And NIST, anonymous drop just hit my inbox," Marcel said. "No name, just a burner IP. I verified the data. It's authentic." "What is it?" Tamika asked over speakerphone. Marcel inhaled slowly. "Dr. Krause's email archives." Ariel sat up. "You're sure?" 100%. Every message, calendar entry, system access log, years of it. Someone on the inside leaked the full backup. There was a pause. Then he added, "And Tamika, it's bad." The files were staggering. Buried inside Krause's internal email history were threads that painted a chilling picture, not just of arrogance, but strategy. One thread, dated 2 weeks before Ariel's solution had gone viral, was addressed to Harvard's Dean of Mathematics and a select group of tenured staff. Subject line: The Monroe Disruption. "We are seeing a dangerous shift in narrative. If this girl's work is allowed to define the residency, we risk undermining decades of curated reputation. Let's proceed cautiously with public acknowledgement. Her paper should not pass without departmental vetting and a rigorous integrity review. There is also concern she may have had outside assistance, even if unknowingly. Her exposure on social media creates a PR risk if we appear dismissive, but full acceptance sets a precedent that's difficult to reverse." Another email, sent days before the footage was leaked, suggests delaying resolution. "Let the noise fade. Once cycle ends, we can quietly correct the record." The tone was clinical, but the meaning was clear. Harvard hadn't doubted Ariel because the math was wrong. They doubted her because the math was hers. From her, the files leaked online before Harvard could stop them. Screenshots, PDFs. One internal message simply titled, "She's not our image." As the emails detonated across the internet, another message appeared, one Marcel hadn't seen before, buried deep in a deleted folder. A short reply from Krause to a colleague, dated the night before he filed the plagiarism report. "She solved it. I know she did. But she can't be the first. They tried to bury it. But once the email leaked, there was no shovel deep enough to hide it." Dr. Wendell Krause, Harvard's pride, the man who once lectured on intellectual humility, had written it himself: casual, confident, careless. "She solved it. I know she did. But she can't be the first." It was the final thread. The dam broke. Every network opened their morning with it. Every podcast had an emergency episode. Even academic journals, usually slow, deliberate, issued public responses in real time. The full email dump was now public record. And it was damning. Buried among lecture notes and staff updates were internal emails showing how Krause had orchestrated an active effort to discredit Ariel, not just quietly, but aggressively. One message, sent 2 days after Ariel raised her hand in class, read, "The Monroe girl is a fluke. A diversity experiment gone rogue. We cannot allow her to set precedent for admissions credibility." Another email, marked urgent, had Krause directing his TA to locate all copies of her drafts and pull access to any open documents she's created. "I want full visibility before this gets out of hand." Even worse, there were replies. Other faculty chimed in, some with silence, others with assent. One colleague wrote, "Understood. Already disabled her class cloud account." Another, "Have her presentation file. We'll scrub metadata before review." Harvard's ivory tower didn't just lean on racism. It had documented it. Ariel sat quietly at the breakfast table when the news broke. Her eggs had gone cold, her juice untouched. Tamika was across from her, phone in hand, scrolling through headlines, face unreadable. Then Ariel said softly, "They put it in writing." Tamika didn't look up. Of course they did. The powerful always think they're well, untouchable enough to talk freely. Ariel blinked, slowly. He called me an experiment. No, Tamika said, locking eyes with her. He called you a fluke, because he didn't understand how someone like you could exist outside his system. A long silence passed between them, then Ariel whispered, "He'll still land on his feet, won't he?" Tamika didn't answer, because the truth was probably. Harvard responded in the only way it knew how, with strategy. By mid-afternoon, they had quietly updated their faculty directory. Dr. Krauss was listed as on indefinite leave. No press conference. No apology. No clear consequences. Just an empty office and a missing name. But the students weren't fooled. By the evening, protesters gathered on the steps of Harvard's math building, hundreds at first, then thousands. Placards read, "We do the math and the math says racist. If she's a fluke, then fluke me too. Expel the liars, not the prodigies." One banner stretched 2 stories high. Number Erase Talent student organizations demanded full investigation. Faculty from across the country signed open letters calling for Harvard's leadership to resign. Donors froze funds. Public figures called out not just Harvard, but elite academia as a whole. Still, the institution tried to position itself as the victim of a rogue professor. Dr. Krauss's views do not reflect the values of this institution. Read the official statement. But no one bought it, because the evidence showed otherwise. Emails weren't just Krauss's. Others had complied. Others had agreed. And some had participated. The cracks were showing. And Ariel? She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her silence now spoke louder than Harvard's entire PR department. 2 days after the leak, an envelope arrived. Cream-colored, hand-delivered. No return address. Inside, a single card. MIT Black Future Innovators Summit, keynote invitation, Cambridge, Massachusetts. April 4th, guest of honor. Ariel Monroe. Tamika read it first. She looked up slowly, unsure. Ariel sat across from her, eyes wide, not with excitement but with weight. "I don't know if I want to speak," she said. Tamika leaned in. "Then don't. But what if people need me to?" Tamika reached across the table and held her hand. "Speak because you need to, Ari. Not because they failed to." Ariel nodded slowly, and said nothing else. That night, as the house settled into silence, Ariel stood in front of the mirror. Not the bathroom one. The full-length mirror in her room. The one where she used to try on future Ariel in different poses. Valedictorian, scientist, Harvard graduate. She looked at herself now. Braids pulled back, sweatshirt oversized, eyes sharper than they were a month ago. Her reflection looked back at her not with fear, but with a question. What now? The next morning, a second envelope arrived, this one stamped with a Department of Justice seal. Inside, a subpoena. Ariel Monroe was now part of a federal civil rights investigation. The auditorium was standing room only. Inside MIT's Kresge Hall, nearly 1,000 seats had filled within minutes. Rows of scholars, tech leaders, policymakers, students, and journalists, all gathered for the Black Future Innovators Summit. The theme this year, Unlearning the Gatekeepers. But no one came for the theme. They came for the girl. In the green room backstage, Ariel Monroe sat cross-legged on a couch, her hands resting atop the same pink notebook they once tried to erase. She wore a simple black dress, her braids pinned away from her face. No designer, no glam squad, no handlers. Just her. Tamika adjusted the back of her collar gently, smoothing it out as if it mattered. It didn't. But mothers do what they can, when they can't fix the rest. "You ready?" Tamika asked softly. Ariel nodded. "I think so." Tamika bent down, forehead to forehead. "Speak like nobody's watching, but don't forget they all are." Then came the knock. 3 short taps. 5 minutes. The lights dimmed. The crowd hushed. On stage, a host gave a brief introduction, though it was hardly needed. "Tonight, we welcome someone who solved more than just a math problem. She solved something institutions feared, admitting existed a genius in a body they never expected to carry it. Please welcome Ariel Monroe." The applause began before she stepped out, but it died into silence the moment she did, because no one expected her to walk with such calm, such poise, such deliberate stillness. No notes in her hand, no script, just her notebook, tucked under her arm. She reached the podium, paused, looked up. Her voice, when it came, was gentle, but unmistakably certain. "When I first saw the problem," she began, "I didn't know it had a name. I didn't know it was famous. I didn't know it had beaten people with doctorates and tenure. She took a breath. I just knew it felt wrong. Like it wanted to be solved. Like it was unfinished. The screen behind her lit up with the first diagram. Her own handwriting. The same proof that went viral, but here, it wasn't viral. It was sacred. She moved through the equations with ease, not in an effort to impress, but to reveal. She explained the symmetries, the flawed constraints, the overlooked pattern in the recursive structure that no one had questioned in 4 decades. And she didn't rush. Because for the first time, no one interrupted. A professor in the front row leaned forward, mouth slightly open. A scientist from Oxford elbowed his colleague in disbelief. One boy, about her age, in the 4th row, stared like he had just seen the future walk across the page. But Ariel's voice never cracked. Because this moment wasn't for fame. It was for clarity. Then she said it. I'm not the smartest person in the world. I don't know everything. But I do know what it feels like to be right and called wrong, not because of the math, but because of the mirror they see you through. She paused. Long. Waited. I was told I couldn't have done this. Not alone. Not really. But here's what no one asked. Why did you need me to be wrong so badly? The audience inhaled like one body. Maybe it's not just the math that needs rewriting, she said. Maybe it's the rubric of who gets to count. Then she smiled, not in triumph, but in truth. And the room exploded into a standing ovation. Not polite, not performative, thunderous. She stepped back from the mic, nodded once, and left the stage as simply as she had entered. No fist in the air, no defiance, just dignity. Backstage, Tamika waited, arms open. Ariel fell into her, exhaling for the first time all night. Tamika kissed her forehead. That, she whispered, was what justice sounds like. The emails came first, then texts, then offers. In the hours after her talk, Ariel's name lit up every platform. An exclusive sit-down on 60 Minutes. A scholarship fund launched in her name. Schools requesting her curriculum. A think tank offering her a mentorship program. A research lab inviting her to collaborate on a machine learning interface inspired by her proof. But one email stood out. It came through an encrypted source. Subject line: Legacy Futures Initiative. Tamika read it twice before showing it to Ariel. We are an independent private foundation that funds extraordinary talent in the early stages of genius. We've supported several Nobel laureates, disruptors, and innovators before the world knew their names. We believe you are one of them. We'd like to offer you full academic sponsorship, mentorship from our scientific advisors, and eventual leadership in a think tank built around reimagining equity in innovation. No public fanfare, no press, just power in the right hands. At the bottom, a list of previous fellows. Tamika raised an eyebrow. Names she recognized. Men who built companies that changed the world. Women who led policy revolutions. Impressive. Too impressive. Because something about it didn't sit right. Tamika closed the laptop and looked at Ariel. What do you think? Ariel shrugged. It sounds big. It is. But it doesn't say what they want from me. Tamika nodded slowly. Exactly. That night, while Ariel slept, Tamika sat alone on the patio of their hotel room. She looked out over the city skyline, her phone glowing dim in her hand. She wasn't paranoid. She was prepared. And she had a mother's intuition. A girl like Ariel didn't just attract mentors. She attracted handlers. And power didn't offer itself without conditions. Tamika typed the foundation's name into a private investigator's server and gasped as the first name tied to it popped up. W. Krause, Strategic Advisor, 2012, 2016, Confidential Division. The meeting was scheduled in a glass-walled boardroom overlooking the Charles River. Modern, clean, sunlit, intentionally designed to feel like transparency. But Tamika could smell the script the moment they walked in. 3 people sat across the table. A woman in a charcoal power suit, clipboard in hand. A man with square glasses and a lawyer's smile. And a third figure, older, calm, seated at the head like a chess master observing the board. He introduced himself only as Langston. No last name, just power, quiet, and confident. The Legacy Futures Initiative had arranged the meeting within 24 hours of Ariel's MIT speech. They'd flown in on a private jet, booked a luxury suite, and prepped a 12-page packet printed on bonded paper. They came prepared. So did Tamika. She brought a copy of the leaked file, the one that linked Wendell Krause to their foundation. She hadn't mentioned it yet. Not yet. Because she wanted to see the performance first. Langston opened with charm. "We believe in impact, Miss Monroe," he said, gesturing gently toward Ariel. "Not just brilliance, but the kind that shapes culture. That leaves fingerprints on the future." Ariel sat still, unreadable. Langston continued. "We're offering a full ride through any university of your choice. Immediate placement in our Young Luminaries cohort. Access to research labs, mentors, tools, and media training. Everything you need, not just to succeed, but to lead." Then came the packet. The woman slid it across the table, her voice smooth. "This outlines our terms of partnership. A narrative management clause, standard NDA, limited public media access, and a deferred rights agreement on all future published academic material produced under our advisement." Tamika raised an eyebrow. "Narrative management?" The lawyer chimed in. "We ask that all external storytelling involving Ariel's journey be run through our communications team first for alignment." "Alignment with what?" Tamika pressed. "With the mission, the message," the woman said softly. "To protect her, and her legacy." Ariel finally spoke. Her voice was flat, but clear. "So I can talk about my math, but not my story." Langston leaned forward. "We want to amplify you, not politicize you." "Isn't erasing part of the story political?" she asked. The room went quiet. The woman gave a tight smile. "Think of it as protection. The world is chaotic. We provide structure. Safety." Tamika pushed the packet back across the table. "That structure, does it include strategic advisors like Wendell Krauss?" Now Langston flinched. "Not visibly. But enough." "I beg your pardon?" he asked. Tamika slid her phone forward, screen on. "The investigator's report open. Your foundation employed him from 2012 to 2016. Confidential division. Under an equity think tank. You didn't list that on your proposal." Langston didn't blink. But the smile in the lawyer's eyes faded. "That part of our operation no longer exists," the woman said carefully. "But it existed," Tamika replied. "And it shaped how you operate, who you invest in, who you silence." Langston folded his hands. "If the association is a concern, we're happy to issue a statement distancing ourselves from." Tamika shook her head. "We don't want distance. We want truth." Ariel stood. Everyone turned. "I'm not for sale," she said. Langston raised an eyebrow. "It's not a sale. It's a partnership." "No," she said, firmer. "It's a performance. And I've already been performed enough." She looked directly at the woman. "Your offer says I can become a leader, but only if I lead the way you want. Only if I stay quiet about what happened. Only if I rewrite my story in a way that protects everyone else but me." The woman opened her mouth to respond. Ariel held up a hand. "I'm 12. And I already know how that game ends." She turned. Tamika followed. They walked out of the boardroom, with no applause, no camera, no headlines, but with power, real power. Because this time, they had written the ending. Back in the hotel room, Ariel sat cross-legged on the bed, her pink notebook open again. But she wasn't writing equations this time. She was sketching out something bigger. A platform, a portal, a place for kids like her. Ariel imagined an online space where young black students across the country, across the world, could learn without begging to be believed. A library of math, science, engineering, with stories and lessons by people who looked like them, with truth as the curriculum, not just numbers. Tamika sat beside her, watching her draw wireframes in her notebook like they were equations. "What are you building?" she asked. Ariel didn't look up. "I'm building what I needed." That night, she made a video. No production crew, no lighting, just a laptop and her voice. She spoke directly to the camera. "Hi, I'm Ariel Monroe. I solved a math problem, but that's not the hardest thing I've done. The hardest thing was being believed. So I'm starting something new. For every kid who's been told they're too loud, too smart, too different, too much. It's called No Gatekeepers. It's free, it's real, it's yours." She uploaded it, then closed the laptop. By morning, the site had crashed from traffic. Hundreds of thousands had logged on, and buried in her inbox was a message with no name, just a subject line. "They won't let this stand." The first version of the site was simple. A gray banner, a single header, "Math without walls," and beneath it, one sentence in bold: "Genius should never need permission." Ariel and Tamika launched it from the kitchen table on a rainy Wednesday morning. No PR firm, no rollout, no countdown. Just a quiet post on Ariel's page, and a pinned tweet. Within 30 minutes, the site crashed. By that evening, it had been viewed by 2.3 million people. There were no sponsors, no ads, no celebrity endorsements, just raw brilliance videos, animated lessons, proof breakdowns, STEM storytelling from black and brown mathematicians who had lived too long in the margins. Ariel uploaded her first module, Symmetry in the Real World. Shot from her bedroom, whiteboard behind her, hoodie slightly wrinkled, chalk in hand. But the voice? Clear, commanding, generous. She didn't teach like a professor. She taught like someone who remembered what it was like not to be believed. Within a week, teachers in Mississippi, Oakland, Detroit, Baltimore, and beyond began assigning her lessons as homework. STEM clubs started using her videos as intros to math units. Parents emailed Tamika at all hours. My daughter saw herself in Ariel. For the first time ever, she said she wanted to be a mathematician. I don't have the words to thank you. I just hope you both keep going. Tell Ariel, she didn't just open a door. She blew it off the hinges. Tamika read each one aloud, sometimes with tears running down her cheeks. But Ariel never paused. She was already uploading Module 2, Proof and Power, Who Gets to Say What's True. Then came the interview requests. NPR, PBS, The New York Times. Every outlet wanted her voice. But she picked carefully. She declined the ones who called her Harvard's accuser or math's little disruptor. She granted only the ones who centered the work, the kids, the future. Because this wasn't about Harvard anymore. This was about access. Within a month, Math Without Walls had registered over 70,000 unique users. Volunteers joined in droves, educators, coders, visual artists, curriculum writers. A group of retired black professors reached out and offered to help build the archives. A PhD candidate in linguistics translated her content into Spanish and Swahili. A group of middle schoolers in Newark made custom stickers with Ariel's face and the quote, "I don't need your gate, I built a bridge." Ariel's favorite message came from a 10-year-old boy in Jackson Heights. "I thought I was dumb because I didn't sound smart, but then I did your symmetry thing and got it right. I showed my teacher." She cried. "Thank you." She printed that one, taped it above her desk, and kept going. By week 5, she wasn't just a student. She had become a force. Her platform was now a movement, equal parts learning center, political statement, and safe haven. People began calling her the STEM Mandela, the digital Douglas, the anti-Krauss. She rejected all titles. "I'm not a symbol," she said during a rare live Q&A. "I'm a system we weren't supposed to see." But not everyone was celebrating. On the 6th Monday after launch, Harvard released a statement. Buried in the footnotes of a press release on STEM equity advancement, the institution quietly announced the launch of a new internal initiative, Equimath, Advancing Inclusive Mathematics in Elite Spaces. The headline read like an apology. The subtext read like a pivot. At first, people ignored it until someone noticed the listed leadership. Equimath's director, Dr. Julian West. White. Male. Tenured. A professor known for research in theoretical combinatorics, but never once involved in community math initiatives, diversity outreach, or anti-racist education. He had, however, written several public op-eds defending the intellectual neutrality of STEM. Within hours, screenshots circulated. Side-by-side images appeared across social media. On the left, Ariel, in front of her whiteboard, hoodie on, chalk midair. On the right, Dr. West, in a tweed blazer, seated in a high-back chair on a faculty webpage. Captions wrote themselves. Guess who they gave the credit to? This is what happens when institutions copy, then erase. Math without walls. Harvard without shame. The backlash was immediate. Commentators dragged the move as insulting, performative, and colonizing. Black mathematicians staged a digital walkout of Harvard's upcoming symposium. Donors threatened to pull support. Alumni groups demanded an explanation. But Harvard didn't blink. They released a second statement. "We are proud of Dr. West's appointment and look forward to the impactful contributions of Equimath in the ongoing work of broadening STEM access." Nowhere was Ariel's name mentioned, not even once. When Tamika showed her the headline, Ariel stared at it quietly. Then she stood, walked to the window, looked out. "They built a mirror," she said. Tamika tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "They saw what I made and they built a version that reflects them. Not me. Not us." Tamika said nothing. Because the silence said enough. Ariel didn't cry. She didn't rant. She uploaded a new lesson that night. Replication versus recognition. The math of erasure. In the intro, she looked straight into the camera and said, "You can steal a format. You can mimic a method. But you can't copy truth. Not when the work speaks louder than the institution." The next morning, a tech leak went viral. Screenshots of an internal Harvard memo discussing how to strategically reposition Equimath as the originating model of new math equity pedagogy. They weren't just copying her. They were preparing to claim she copied them. The screenshots ignited the match. Line after line from the leaked Harvard memo painted a chilling strategy: rebrand, reframe, and repackage Equimath as a first-of-its-kind framework in equitable mathematics. The memo included directives for preemptive publication, narrative management, and suggested PR language to minimize comparisons with external efforts launched by student-led initiatives. Translation: Harvard wasn't just co-opting Ariel's platform. They were preparing to rewrite history. And the internet noticed. Within 24 hours, the backlash was explosive. Math Without Walls trended globally. Public figures weighed in. Ava DuVernay tweeted, "They stole her brilliance. Again. Burn the blueprint, but keep her voice." Trevor Noah posted a segment titled, "How to Erase a Genius in 3 Ivy Steps." Even Beyoncé's publicist reshared the side-by-side screenshots, captioning them simply, "One of these people changed the world. The other took notes." Harvard's silence screamed. They issued no apology. No statement. Only a quiet update to the Equimath site, removing vague claims of originality but doubling down on Dr. West's leadership. But Ariel didn't flinch. Because by now, she understood the cycle. They erase, she rebuilds. They mimic, she evolves. 2 nights later, she went live on her own platform. No script, no lighting. Just her, sitting on the edge of her bed, laptop open, face calm but clear. "I saw the memo," she said. "We all did. I'm not here to argue about what was taken. Because you can't take what wasn't offered." A pause. She continued. "You don't get to rebrand what you refuse to recognize. You don't get to call something new just because you took the soul out of it." Her voice never rose. But it hit like thunder. "We don't need seats at their table. We're building new ones. And ours don't come with conditions." The video racked up 10 million views in 2 days. Clips were played in classrooms, quoted in protests, printed on t-shirts. It wasn't anger. It was architecture. Ariel wasn't tearing things down. She was showing people how to build. But power never surrenders without retaliation. And while the public celebrated her courage, something darker brewed behind the scenes. On a quiet Thursday morning, a courier arrived at Tamika's doorstep. No fanfare, no cameras, just a manila envelope. Inside, a lawsuit, filed in Massachusetts court. Plaintiff, Dr. Wendell Krause, alleging defamation, reputational harm, and intentional interference with professional standing. Defendants, Ariel Monroe and Tamika Monroe. Tamika stared at the pages, then flipped to the final line. Krause was demanding $4 million in damages. At first, Ariel didn't understand. "I thought he was fired," she said. "He wasn't," Tamika replied. "He's on paid leave." "But, what did I do?" Tamika looked up. "You existed. Publicly." The story spread quickly. Disgraced Professor Sue's black teen who exposed him. Headlines varied, but the message was clear. Krause wasn't done. His lawsuit argued that the leaks had irreparably damaged his academic future, that Ariel's public commentary encouraged a wave of unjust harassment, and that Tamika had weaponized a child for political gain. It was cruel. It was calculated. And it was exactly the kind of tactic institutions allow when they don't want to admit they were wrong. But something had shifted. The public was no longer quiet. Ariel's supporters, lawyers, educators, activists formed a digital coalition. They launched a legal fund within hours. $250,000 was raised by the end of the day. Civil rights attorneys offered pro bono defense. Celebrities pledged support. But Tamika was torn. "Going to court means more exposure," she told Ariel. "I know," Ariel whispered, "but if we stay quiet now, it means he won." Tamika nodded slowly. She had taught her daughter to stand in her truth. Now her daughter was teaching her how to defend it. Late that night, Ariel sat alone in her room. She opened her notebook not to sketch math this time, but to list every time she had been told she didn't belong. Every time a door was closed, every time her voice was questioned, she wrote them like equations. 1 plus 1 plus 1. Not to remember the pain, but to measure the pattern, to understand the scale of what she was fighting. Then, at the bottom of the page, she wrote one sentence in bold: "You can't defame the truth." As her legal team prepared to respond, a federal investigator reached out privately with new evidence, an encrypted voice recording of a private faculty meeting. In it, Krauss could be heard saying, "If this goes public, I'll take the girl down with me. They'll never believe her over me. Not once the machine gets moving." The courtroom was smaller than people expected. No marble columns, no grand staircase, just beige walls, dark wooden benches, and an American flag sagging slightly in the back. But the stakes inside were anything but small. The case had been fast-tracked. Krauss v. Monroe, Civil Division, Boston Federal Courthouse. The judge, the Honorable Elise Navarro, sharp, composed, and known for cutting through theatrics with a scalpel. Outside, protesters gathered with signs that read, "You can't sue silence. You tried to erase her. Now the world's watching. We are Ariel." Inside, Ariel sat at the defense table. She was now 13, barely. Her posture was calm, her expression unreadable, but her right hand gripped the side of her chair like an anchor. Tamika sat beside her, not as a mother this time, but as co-defendant, co-warrior, co-witness to a war they never asked to fight. Krauss entered with a smirk, tailored suit, fresh haircut, but he looked smaller now, not physically but mythically. A man once feared, now exposed. His lawyer, a seasoned Ivy League bulldog, stood beside him, prepping arguments, whispering strategy. But no strategy could undo what had already been seen. The first 2 days were procedural. Opening statements. Harvard denied formal involvement. Krauss claimed defamation, professional harm, and irreparable damage to his reputation caused by a coordinated digital campaign rooted in unverified claims. He insisted Ariel's public platform had encouraged a mob. He called her a catalyst of misinformation. Tamika's attorney, Asha Reed, stood in response. "Our defense is not theoretical," she said, slowly. "It's mathematical, literal, documented, and irrefutable." Then she pointed to Ariel. "And she is not the catalyst of a lie. She is the correction of one." The evidence was layered. Security footage, screenshots, file timestamps. Expert witnesses confirmed the solution's originality. Jade Park, Ariel's quiet observer turned advocate, testified on day 3. She described, under oath, what she saw in the library that night. Her voice shook, but her memory was precise. "She wasn't copying," Jade said. "She was thinking, solving, creating, and doing it faster than anyone I've ever seen." Then came the voice recording. The encrypted file, authenticated and entered into evidence by federal investigators. A clip from a private Harvard faculty meeting. Krauss's voice, unmistakable. "If this goes public, I'll take the girl down with me. They'll never believe her over me. Not once the machine gets moving." The room went silent. Even the jury stiffened. Krauss's lawyer objected, questioning context, authenticity, even motive. But the judge overruled. "Let it stand," Judge Navarro said. "The jury will decide what it means." Then came the final day. Ariel took the stand. The courtroom was packed, reporters, students, legal scholars, and more black girls than anyone had seen in a courtroom like this in years. She wore a navy blue dress and her original pink notebook in her lap. When sworn in, she didn't stutter. She told the story from the beginning. The lecture, the laugh, the dare, the erasure, the notebook theft, the silence that followed, and then the fire that started when she refused to shrink. Every sentence landed like a drumbeat. When asked why she believed Dr. Krauss targeted her, she didn't accuse. She stated, "He couldn't see me. Not really. So when I solved what he said couldn't be solved, he didn't ask how. He asked who helped me. Because in his world, someone like me doesn't get to be first." She looked directly at him when she said it. And Krauss, for the first time during the trial, looked down. Tamika was called next. Her voice was steadier than expected. She didn't speak as a mother, but as a witness to history. "I've worked my whole life in spaces where I had to work twice as hard to be heard, half as often. And when my daughter was erased, I wasn't shocked. I was tired. But tired doesn't mean quiet." She turned to the jury. "My daughter didn't ruin his career. He did, by choosing to protect his pride instead of the truth." Closing arguments came quickly. Krause's lawyer argued that a child's genius shouldn't excuse public destruction of a man's livelihood. Asha Reed responded, Mr. Krause's career wasn't destroyed by a child. It was exposed by one. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. At 6:03 p.m., they returned. The verdict: in favor of Ariel and Tamika Monroe. Unanimous. No damages awarded to Dr. Krause. Instead, the judge issued a written opinion. This court acknowledges not only the absence of defamation, but the presence of systemic injustice that this case has brought to light. Genius, when expressed by those our systems fail to expect, should be celebrated, not silenced. She concluded with a rare judicial directive. Harvard University is hereby ordered to publish a formal acknowledgement of Ariel Monroe's authorship and contribution to the resolution of the Villarreal problem in all public-facing materials that previously discredited or omitted her name. The courtroom erupted in applause. Ariel didn't smile. She simply exhaled. A long, full breath. Tamika pulled her into a hug. It was not triumph. It was release. They had survived something unspeakable, and still stood. Outside, cameras flashed. Microphones waited. But Ariel didn't stop to speak. She walked straight through the noise, past the lights, through the parking lot, down the street. Tamika followed a step behind, silent. Where are we going? She finally asked. Ariel didn't turn around. Home, she said. But not yet. Tamika caught up, her breath catching. Where first? Ariel looked ahead. Eyes clear, voice soft. To the place it all started. An hour later, Ariel stood outside her old middle school in Atlanta, staring at the door of the classroom where she first solved an equation no one believed she could understand. She reached into her bag, pulled out a marker, and walked inside. The walls hadn't changed. Same chipped blue paint near the lockers. Same buzzing fluorescent lights. Same rusted radiator in the hallway corner, clanking like it still hadn't been fixed. Ariel Monroe stood outside. Room 204, a quiet smile forming on her face. Tamika stood beside her, holding a small tote with printed handouts and a wrapped gift box. You sure you're ready? She asked. Ariel nodded. I've been ready. The door creaked open. Inside, 26 sixth graders buzzed with energy. The chalkboard still held half-erased notes from the morning's lesson, ratios and proportions. The substitute teacher looked up and nearly dropped his dry erase marker. Oh, you're here. I didn't think you'd actually. But Ariel had already walked in. No camera crew. No press. Just her, in a soft hoodie and jeans, hair pulled back, the same pink notebook tucked beneath her arm. For a few seconds, the room went silent. Then came whispers. That's her. Is that the girl from the math thing? Wait, that's the Ariel. Ariel walked slowly to the front of the classroom and set the notebook on the teacher's desk. She looked out at the rows of small faces, some wide-eyed, some skeptical, some squinting to confirm if what they were seeing was real. Then she spoke. Hi, I'm Ariel Monroe. Pause. Some people know me for solving a math problem. But that's not why I'm here today. She picked up a piece of chalk. I'm here because this is the classroom where I learned the difference between being smart and being seen. She started the lesson by drawing 3 dots on the board. A triangle. Simple. Unthreatening. Can anyone tell me what this is? A few hands raised hesitantly. Triangle. A boy offered. Ariel nodded. Right. But let's look closer. She drew 2 lines inside the triangle, creating smaller triangles within it. Then she added more layers, shapes within shapes. Geometry folding in on itself like secrets layered behind silence. That's how math works, she said. You think it's one thing, until you look again. She turned around. And that's how people work too. The students were locked in, not because she was famous, but because she made math feel like magic. She showed them symmetry through sneaker design. She explained ratios using lunch portions. She talked about patterns in music and how rap verses often follow fractal structures, something even Kendrick Lamar probably didn't realize. And in between, she told them stories. Not about lawsuits or sabotage or headlines, but about the moment she was laughed at for raising her hand. The room went quiet, she said, but not the good kind. She looked at the back row. I remember feeling like maybe I was wrong. Not about the math, but about thinking I had the right to speak it. Then she tapped the chalkboard twice. That's when I learned something. A girl in the second row raised her hand. Were you scared? Ariel smiled. I was terrified. Another student asked, why didn't you quit? She thought about that for a moment, then answered simply, Because I remembered who I was before the world told me who I wasn't. She walked over to her pink notebook and flipped it open. Pages were now laminated, preserved evidence of what couldn't be erased. This notebook used to just be mine. Now it belongs to every kid who's been told their ideas were too loud, too fast, too bold, too much. She closed it gently. You don't have to raise your hand to ask permission anymore. You raise it to remind the world you're still here. Silence again. But the good kind. The kind that holds. The kind that stays. As class ended, students came up one by one, some shy, some excited. One asked for a photo. Another gave her a folded drawing. A boy handed her a math puzzle he'd made himself, scribbled in blue ink on a crumpled sheet of paper. Will you solve it? He asked. Ariel grinned. Only if you help me. Before she left, she handed the substitute a small box wrapped in green paper. It's for the classroom, she said. Inside was a brand new set of graphing calculators, 3 math games, and a handwritten letter addressed to the next Ariel. No name signed, just a line in the corner. Some people learn by being taught. Others, they learn by being doubted. Outside, the sun had begun to dip. Tamika opened the car door, watching her daughter walk slowly down the front steps of the school she had once quietly slipped out of each afternoon. Ariel stopped halfway down the path and looked back. Not at the building, but at the girl she used to be. The one who sat in the second row. The one who hesitated before raising her hand. The one who thought genius had a dress code. And slowly, Ariel raised her hand. Not to ask. Not to wait. Just to say, I made it. Some people learn by being taught. Others, they learn by being doubted. No child should have to prove their innocence just because of their skin. No dream should be delayed by someone else's bias. If this story made you feel